Morning, everybody. Super excited to have Eleanor Thompson from Branchworks. Eleanor, welcome.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
I know we've been going back and forth, chatting about some great stuff. Looking forward to our event in London together in Q1. But it's great to have you. You have been a customer of ours in the past and now launched this incredible agency that we feel many of our customers and prospects would be able to, leverage and help and build their programs. So why don't you take a few minutes, introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about some of the cool stuff you're working on.
Thank you so much. Yes. So as you said, my name is Eleanor. I am based in London. I'm the founder of Branchworks. Been in partnerships for over 10 years now, working at everything from VARs to the likes of Microsoft to startup ISVs, growing ISVs, have built partner programs, partner education, and built channels from the ground up. And then started this company 2 years ago now, which is really, really exciting.
So what got you started? What was the driver for you? I'm not going to work for other companies anymore. I'm going to start on my own. What led to it?
I think it was just, I saw so much opportunity to support growing companies with their partnerships. We do everything from building partner programs from scratch to going in and kind of redesigning further on down the line. And I think I really saw that if you do it right initially, then you can save yourself so much time and resources in the long run. And that's what Branchworks really aims to help companies do, is really set that foundation for scale. So that, of course, you need iterations and edits along the way, but actually you should be able to grow your company with partnerships alongside it if you start well at the beginning, which is what we want to help companies do.
Terrific. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. You said you came to the conclusion that if companies set things up the right way. Can you tell us a little bit about, you worked for some amazing brand without getting confidential details, but at a macro level through your personal journey, what do you think these brands did right and what are the areas they could have improved?
Yeah, I think what companies did right is investing in partnerships early, investing and seeing the importance of partnerships early, and therefore bringing people into the company to support the growth of that. And I think that's what, every company that I worked at did right. There are differences in how they did that for sure. And I think some companies focused more on having a proper partner program earlier, partner education, partner certification. I think those things that, some companies brought in earlier than others. I think the companies that bring the partner education and partner certification, things like that in early, tend to do better with partners quicker because they're actually supporting their partners to grow. I think the companies that maybe don't invest in those things and just bring on a load of partners and hope for the best, that's where I see, them stumbling a little bit and struggling to get that return on investment. And that makes it harder to grow quickly.
That makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about what is the right time to think about building a partner ecosystem. Let's say, we're a few hundred people, we're selling direct and it's going kind of well. What should be sort of the key drivers for us to consider that, okay, maybe we should go build a partner network?
Yeah, I would definitely start earlier than that. I would start earlier than a few hundred people. I would say once you've got product market fit, once you've got paying customers, and once you've got about three to five salespeople, then you can start thinking about partners. That doesn't mean to say you need to hire a VP of alliances at that point. I never recommend doing that straight off the bat either, but it definitely means you can start thinking about partners. Start asking your customers, do you have any partners that you work with? Do you have any partners that you know and trust that you can recommend that we work with? Start asking those questions and you can start to build a picture of what your partner ecosystem could look like. If you wait until you're a few hundred people down the line, you've got a massive sales team that are only used to selling direct, it's much harder to change that behavior at that point. So I start having these conversations early and it makes it much easier to grow with partners rather than bolting them on when you're hundreds of people down the line.
So, if I follow Jason Lemkin, who's sort of driving SaaStr and a few other people, thought leaders in the SaaS space, they talk about 3 phases of sales. First is founder-led. You're literally going out, redoing your slides from one meeting to another to find the ideal customer profile. Then you have sort of sales-led motion when you're building your 3-step, 4-step, 5-step, 8-step process, depending on the segment. And then you have system-led. You hire a CRO, builds an infrastructure, brings in the AE and the BDRs and the full-blown thing, right? So what stage do you think, if I'm in one of those three stages, I should be thinking about partners?
Between stage 2 and 3, I think. You may not have your CRO on board yet, but you definitely got some salespeople, and it's not completely founder-led. I speak to founders quite regularly and they say, I'm interested in partners. How do I get started with them? What should I be doing? And at that point, I can make a few recommendations as to how they can, set themselves up for success further on down the line. But, we wouldn't bring our company in to do a piece of work and build a full partner program, etc., until probably between that 2 to 3 stage.
Okay. So let's say I got 3 or 4 salespeople, few million in sales, mid-market, maybe a little bit in enterprise. So walk me through, as a founder with my sales lead, what should be my first conversation look like? Like, how do I start this internally?
So your first conversation internally or your first conversation with a partner?
Internally, saying that, hey, things like we're going to go, we need to scale through a partner network. Where should we start? Like, what should we even think about?
Yeah. So the first thing you need to do is create an ideal partner profile. So you need your IPP in the same way that you've got an ICP, your ideal customer profile. You need to think about what your ideal partner profile looks like. And that can be, from your ICP. You want an overlap in ICP with your partners. And then think about, if you've got any other technology integrations that you work really well with, like who are their partners? Who do they work with? There's all sorts of things that you can think about when building out your ideal partner profile. But it should help you give a picture of the types of companies that you want to work with. And alongside that, speak to your customers. Go and ask them who they work with, who they trust, who they, if they were going to go and ask for a services business, or they were going to ask for some advice, or they've signed a reseller agreement, go and ask them who that is and speak to the ecosystem that you're currently in. And that will start to build a picture for you of the types of companies that you could potentially work with.
Okay. So once I get a target, let's say here are the types of companies, maybe 2 or 3 types, whether they're bloggers, whether they're affiliates, whether they're resellers or VARs or disties, whatnot. Where do I begin? I don't know them. I just sort of happen to know who they are. Should I just pick up the phone and start calling them, or are there things I should put together?
You can pick up the phone and start calling them for sure. I don't think many people do that, to be honest, now. So I think it probably would be quite successful if you were to start calling potential partners. I think you probably do quite well, but you need to understand what your value proposition is. And your value proposition is different from your customer value proposition. Like, what value do you have to offer to partners? Why would they work with you? Why is it interesting for them to work with you? Do you help them expand their services revenue? Are you going to give a hefty commission on the product? That's not always a driver for companies. It's interesting for smaller companies especially. But what is it that you're offering and your partnership will help them to do? What's the value in that? If you can nail that, then you'll have a conversation when you're reaching out to people. If you don't know what value you're going to take to people and you're just going to them saying, hey, we want to partner with you, your company looks great, then it's like going to a customer without a value proposition. It just isn't going to work.
So let's maybe take a couple of examples, right? For example, if we take cybersecurity, it's a hot space. Companies are constantly looking for, resellers, because there's been an establishment of large sets of ecosystems around the world around cybersecurity. So if my, ACV is around $30,000 to $50,000, I sell predominantly mid-market, not a very complex solution, but tends to go with a couple of other things. How do I know, I've figured out who my customers get supported by, as you just said. Now, how do I target that list? How does the first conversation look like? You talked about customer business proposition needs to be different from customer value proposition. So help us construct that a little bit.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about your partner value proposition, what is it that you can offer to them? Why are you interesting for them to work with? And also find out from them what they want for a partner. Why would they work with partners? What other partnerships do they have? What has been successful in the past with partnerships? What has not been successful in the past with partnerships? Go and do good discovery when you're speaking to these prospective partners as well. And that will help shape your pitch back to them. Because otherwise you could just be going to these people and saying, hey, we'll give you loads and loads of commission, or we'll give you a good discount or whatever. And they might be like, well, we don't actually take that. We don't take commissions. We don't take discounts because we want to be vendor agnostic. They could say, oh, we're really we want loads of services revenue. That's really important to us. And then you can tailor your message towards, that type of conversation. They could say, products, product is really important for our customers. We want our customers to be able to, have really interesting products. It's the tech we're interested in. Or maybe it's their internal teams that they want to upskill and certify, and you have a great certification program. So again, finding out what's important to these partners by asking them the questions, doing appropriate discovery, and then tailoring your value proposition to them based on the responses that you've got is really, really valuable. But you've got to know what you can offer before you go and have these conversations. So it's important to find out what resources you have internally, what you can offer to these people, so you don't overcommit and overpromise, or partner please, as I call it, and then end up, damaging trust because you can't deliver.
That's terrific. So let's say I've kind of figured out, even though it's kind of a beta stage, my first presentation, spoken to my customers, what kind of partners, they would like us to work with to complete the solution. Then I've targeted my ideal partner profile. I got the presentation. I got some names. What should I do next?
So if you already presented to them at this point, so you've had the conversation, you've presented to partners, and you've got them interested.
With a few. Yeah.
Amazing. Then I personally think that partner activation has already started at this point. A lot of people can think that partner activation starts post-contract. They're like, let's just get them signed and then we'll work on activating them. But for me, it happens way before that. So you're already in partner activation stage. You should have already gathered a lot of information and documented that information. Don't go and have these conversations with partners and then not document that information, because it's super important to the partnership moving forward. Then you want to do a framework joint business plan is what I like to do at this point. What do you want to achieve together? What are your goals and objectives of this partnership? And when do you want to achieve them by? What is your joint value proposition? What is the message that you're going to take to market together? You are better together. What does that message look like? And then how do you move forward from there? What are your expectations of one another? How are you going to communicate? I like to lay out a basic framework of these things. It can just be a one page, a one slide, whatever it looks like, but get some things down on paper. Don't wait until, you're 6 months in to do a joint business plan. Have a really light touch one early so that you can kick the partnership off in the right way.
What happens if I start talking to partners and I see the business plans are not converging? I see one group of partners want certain things, another group of partners want another thing. What do I do at that moment? Should I just kind of stop and just pick what's easy? Or how do I rationalize? Because it's the first time we're doing it, right? We need to know that whoever we focus with, because you said credibility is everything. So it's better to underpromise and overdeliver. Are there any framework or selection criteria we should be looking at where we say, okay, now that we have done the business planning, it doesn't look like we're ready to support you yet. Let us come back. But what's the frame you think we should be using?
Yeah, so at this point, you probably wouldn't have a formalized partner program, a formalized and documented partner program. All of these things can start to shape that as well. But it's important to know beforehand what you can offer, what resources you do have available today that you can offer to partners. So when you get to this joint business planning stage, you're not freaked out or they're asking for things that are completely, out of your reach and you're unable to do. But there's only really 3 areas that people are going to ask for things on. It's going to be sales, marketing, and enablement. Those are the 3 core areas that people tend to focus on when it comes to partnerships. And as long as it's not too far out of that, you should be okay. Just don't overpromise anything wildly. You could push some things down the road. So you could say, okay, from an enablement perspective, we just don't have certifications available today. We don't have a certification program. We don't have the capacity to build that out right now. So what we can do is XYZ for now. And then you have our assurance that, in 6, 9, 12 months time, whenever it is, that is something that we will work with you to develop and build out, etc. So people don't always expect you to have everything together on day one. It's okay to say we're in the early stages of partnering today. Here's what we can offer. We hear you. We understand that this is what you want from a partnership. We just don't have that available today, but we will work on delivering that in future. Like, people value that. People value honesty and integrity. And if you can bring that, then that's only going to strengthen your relationship. Is when you start saying yes to absolutely everything and then you're unable to deliver on it, that you will damage your relationships with your partners.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, possibly product management will like this, because if it's mostly around product and non-product related marketing, sales and services and other structures, what didn't hear from you, that if some partner comes in and say, yeah, I'd love to sell this product if you had these 15 other features, at this stage, we possibly not commit to that because we already have a sales motion and an ICP. We want to find partners that fit into that current sales flow, not jump into building additional features because we don't know what it's going to work on.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally build new product features just based on a partner request, especially if they're not a partner already. If they are a partner that you've had for a while and they're on your advisory board, some people like to build out partner advisory councils, partner advisory boards as part of their programs. And then you've got, if you've got partners within that are doing product roadmap sessions with you, are coming to you and saying, we've got customers that are asking for these parts in your product or these features within your product. Is this something that you're interested in building? Then yes, you can build out a roadmap of what that looks like. But I personally wouldn't sign a partnership on the premise of you having, additional 10, 15 features within your product.
Great. I know you're working on certain projects that require OEMing the product. So you go to channel, not necessarily through a reseller or a VAR. You have another company that will take your product and put it in their product or rebrand it or some sort of a way. How does that look like from a partnership wise? And if my go-to-market is through an OEM sort of network, not a direct reseller or an affiliate network, how should I approach that? What should be my frame of mind? And how do I evaluate those relationships?
Yeah, so OEM is interesting because for me, it's making a little bit of a comeback, I guess. Like I heard OEM like very, very early in my career. I think it's an old acronym as well. And I've seen it coming back more and more often. So like traditional OEM is that, a company truly embeds your offering in their own, but it can look a few different ways. So you can completely white label something. They might even have access to your IP at some points as well with very, very true OEM. But what I see really commonly now is more of like a powered by motion. So companies are partnering with companies that want to be powered by their offering. So they want to use their offering, bring it into, they want to take partners' offering, bring it into theirs and use it to kind of power a new part of their own offering and white label it in that sense. And then I've had to think about this a lot recently as to how you actually partner with those companies. Like, do they go into your traditional partner program? Do they need sales, marketing, certification support in the same way that your referral and resale partners do? And quite often the answer is no, because they're not marketing your product, because they're not selling your product. They're selling their own with yours embedded. Typically what they need is more technical support. What they need is more product support. They need access to your product and technical support teams more than a referral or a resale partner would. But they don't necessarily need all of the sales, marketing, and enablement support that traditional partners do. So I think it's quite a different play. And I think they're the type of partner that you cannot just treat the same as your other partners. And I actually think it's quite difficult to have the same person managing those types of partners to traditional resale referral, because I think it's a really different management motion.
Okay. So let's move into the next phase. So let's say I got a group of partners and they're interested in working with us. We've done some preliminary business plan, identifying market segments that we're going to go after, put together presentations and bundles. What should be my next step? Like, what should I do with this group of partners? Let's say I got 10 or 15.
Yeah, so they're signed. You've got your preliminary joint business plans. Hopefully you haven't done them all at once, because if you have, that's a lot to kickstart with. So hopefully we've kind of, staggered the onboarding of those. But then, yeah, you go into your onboarding structure. Like, what does that actually look like? What is your onboarding process as you go through that with partners? So you're going to have some training, enablement, introductions to key stakeholders, getting them involved internally. Like, all of those things are important. And I think, a lot of people will have basic enablement that they'll give to new partners, but who are you involving? Who are you introducing? Are you getting like their marketing team introduced to your marketing team? Are you introducing their sales team to your sales team? Like, you need to start introducing all of these cross-functional roles as quick as possible. Partnerships are not just built on partner manager to partner manager. It doesn't work if you want to do that. So how do you actually expand that? So stakeholder, introduction, team introductions, enablements, all of those things are going to be super important in the early stages. And then you want to get them on your tools. What tools do you have? Do you have a PRM like Zenfi? Do you have other tools that you want to include them on, that you need to teach them, educate them, get them using? Because there's a change management piece in there as well if you're asking them to use new things. So all of this will be personal, dependent on your own internal workings. But there's lots of different pieces there, and you should have it structured and have each partner go through every single stage.
So there was a lot. So let's unpack them into maybe in 4 layers. So first, I've identified my partners. I put a plan together. Then we are sort of connecting them with the right players within my organization. So it's people is the next step. And then
Yes.
you also talked about processes, setting up, enablement processes or deal closing processes. So talk a little bit about the process side of things. Let's say we made introductions to head of sales, head of customer success, head of products. They are now connected with some of the core people or some key members from those functions. What happens on the enablement side in a very nuts and bolts level?
Yeah. So you should have your enablement as in your own product enablement. I like to split enablement or training certification path. Enablement's the all up, and then you've got training, and then you've got certification. So within enablement, you're going to have training courses, I would imagine. At least most companies would. If they're not online, if they're early stage companies, they'll probably do, a series of calls or webinars, and that's okay too. Like if you're early, you might not have an LMS platform with all of your courses on there, and that's totally fine. But what does that look like? And it should be consistent amongst the partners as well. So do you have maybe some sales enablement that you're giving them or some sales training? Do you have a technical version of that as well? I like to have 3 streams. So I like a foundational, like here's the company, here's what we do, here's some of our customers, here's why we're great, here's where we're not great, here's how to find an opportunity for us, real foundational introduction to the product itself. And then within that should be a bit about the partnership as well. Like, here's why we've decided to partner together, here's our joint messaging, how we're going to market together. Then you're going to have sales. So a sales stream of that, everything that the sales team go through, how to pitch the offering, pricing, differentiation, all of that stuff. And then the technical is just a more technical version of that, going through the architecture, technical demonstrations, etc. It will really depend on your own product. I like 3 streams to training within the enablement. And then you've got the other parts of enablement, which is, looking at, some marketing initiatives, getting the sales teams introduced, all of the teams that you spoke to getting introduced to one another, and then educating sales teams on either side as to why you're better together and how you're actually going to go to market together.
Awesome. So now let's assume, we're working together. We've started to sell things together. What should I be thinking about? Incentives, commissions, rebates, rewards. I hear all these names. These seem to be complicated. We as a founder or a next stage, we have never done this. So how do I know what's the right sort of financial structure to engage with my partner base?
Yeah, so hopefully you've agreed some of that early before this point. So I would talk about that in the earlier stages around like expectations when you're doing the discovery and you're looking at like the partner model that works for you both. That's when you would have conversations about, if it's a resale partnership and therefore if you're giving discount, if it's a referral partnership and you're giving commission, what's important to each party, and how can you actually, what does that need to look like? But then there's a later conversation as well around further incentives. So for example, if you have a referral partnership, quite often the salespeople at the company are not being paid those referral fees. It's the company itself that gets the referral fees, but it's the salespeople that you want to pitch your offering. It's the salespeople that you want to support, take your joint offering to market. So then how do you incentivize them? You need to think about, if there's a way to get that referral fee to them. Or maybe you can do some incentives on a monthly or quarterly basis where you do maybe a spiff, and these things work differently in different countries. They don't work as well in some countries as in others. So you need to think about that as well. But there may be other incentives that you can do throughout the year to get people to take your offering to market over and above just the standard commission or resale discount that you're giving. And then at some points, you might want to give a little bit more of that if they're incentivized by it. But a lot of companies are not incentivized by commission.
Awesome. So now that we've gone through sort of a full life cycle, getting a set of partners that are selling, now I'm thinking about next year, I want to scale this thing, right? So what should be my approach thinking about the following year now that I've learned who the ideal partner profiles are, how to put together a business plan, a financial structure within the plan, put together enablement in these 3 tracks. And then we have started to sell. They are working with multifunctional, supports from our organization. Now I'm thinking about scale. How do I know how many I need to go after? Should I just stay the way I am, increase velocity through those partners? Or do I need lots of them? Or do I need a few more? How do I decide?
Yes, so it depends how many people you can bring on board to manage them. I think that partnership teams are probably going to get smaller, over the next few years, because I do think we'll be able to automate some of these tasks. I think partner operations will be super important as well. So it depends on the resources that you have to manage a lot of those things. There is no golden number for the perfect amount of partners that you can have within your organization. There's definitely a partner to sales ratio, I would say, but I don't think there's a hard and fast number as to what that should look like. But in terms of how you actually scale your partner program, you need to make sure that you have the right systems and processes in place in order to be able to do that. You can't just go out and sign 100 partners if you're still doing your enablement on a one-to-one, call basis. If you're going to go out and sign 100 partners, you need to make sure that you have an LMS and you have your training tracks on there. You have automated certification process. You can track who got educated, who got certified, when they need to renew, et cetera, et cetera. All of that kind of stuff needs to be scalable and in a process that you have absolutely nailed before you go and scale too much further. The same for your partner program, the same for signing partners. Like, make sure that you've got everything slick before you start going to sign the masses. Otherwise, you're just going to add a load of partners that won't be able to generate revenue with you because you don't have the resources to manage them.
Okay. So I want to go back to a couple of types of partners we talked about. We talked about, let's say, resellers that either, carrying a software as a service product or a hardware. Nevertheless, they're reselling, they're providing services, and etc. Then the second model, which is distinctly different, which is the OEM model, where product is getting embedded. Now, from a sales outwise, traditionally we have seen the OEM model gives companies scale, but they realize lower margin per product because the OEM needs to attain certain cost structure. On the other hand, on the reseller side, the go-to-market is where they have to invest because they don't scale as fast because the OEM has their own distribution. So they realize more. Do you see a trend in the ISV space, one versus the other, especially a mid-market company, how they're trying to go to market?
I see them trying to do both at the same time, often with the same person, which is why I think it's quite challenging. As I said earlier, I think if you're going to go to market with both reseller or referral, the traditional go-to-market motion, and OEM, I think they probably should be managed by separate people or kind of within separate teams. I think a lot of companies start off with referral, and I recommend my clients start off with referral as well. When people come to us and they're like, okay, how do we start with partnerships? I do recommend starting with referral. It gives you a ton of control and when it comes to like enablement, support, etc., there's a lot more leeway with referral partners because they're bringing leads, you're taking leads to them, they're not doing the entire sales cycle for you. So I say start off with referral. Some of your referral partners may want to resell eventually, and then those resellers may want to become OEM partners. So there's typically an evolution there. I wouldn't recommend just going straight in with resell or straight in with OEM unless you have the infrastructure in place to do that effectively.
So let's double click a little bit on the financial side. If I'm starting with an affiliate, moving into a reseller, and maybe even, more involved relationship, roughly what sort of margin structure or commissions do you think I'm expected to share with them in a mid-market product?
Ooh, good question. I'd say for referral, anywhere between 5 to 15%, commission is pretty standard. For referral partners, quite often the commissions is not what drives them. Like it's actually not that important to them. It's one of those things that you kind of have to give, but it's not what's actually going to drive the relationship. There'll be other things that drive that. And that's why it's really important to really understand what your value proposition is when it comes to the partnership. Like, can you help them to scale their services revenue? Can you offer, them, amazing products for their customers and it's going to make them more sticky as a consultancy, for example, like understanding what that is, because referral commission doesn't drive them, but between 5 to 15% is pretty standard. And then with resale, you want to take into account that they're taking a risk. They are managing all of the financials for those, like all of they're collecting all of the licensing fees, etc. for that customer. So they're taking a little bit of a risk. So you want to add on at least another 5% onto what you would add to your referral partners. So I typically see between anywhere from 10 to 40% in some instances on a reseller margin. I typically sit around 20% when I'm recommending.
All right, so let's move to another dimension. 2025 is almost here. And as you think about 2025 and you're trying to grow your own business, what are the exciting trends you see that you think you're going to latch onto, that your customers are also going to look for services or products and automation and support to really build their ecosystem?
Yes. I think tech products are super exciting right now. I think there are a ton more tech products that are becoming available for partnerships specifically. So we've had tech products available for sales teams, for other parts of the business. We haven't had a ton when it's come to partnerships until now. And now all of a sudden we have a load of new tech products that are available for partnerships that really help us to manage our partnerships more effectively and allow us to scale our teams more effectively, because they're automating some of the partner management process. There's account mapping tools, obviously, that we've seen the likes of. There's lots of new and exciting, partner management tools, partner business planning tools, partner LMSs. Like there's lots coming out, which I think is super, super exciting, and they're getting even better. And people are giving feedback as to what they should look like. They're being set up by people that have been in partnerships for a while as well, which is amazing. So I think we'll see a rise of partner tech more so than ever. And I think with that will become I think partner teams will start to get smaller. I don't think that will lead to a decrease in partnership roles, because I think more companies will start investing in partnerships. But I think partnership teams at companies will be smaller, because I don't think that we will need the massive teams that some companies take on today, because we'll be able to automate a lot of the partner management process. We'll have an increase in partner operations, people that are coming in. And I think we'll see a rise in fractional partnership leaders as well, which is an area that, Branchworks will be focusing on more heavily next year, is that we're going to be offering fractional services for our clients. We go in, we build the partner program, partner education, we get them set up for scale with everything that they need in order to go to market more effectively with partners. And then we support them with, fractional hires after that, which can help them scale, what we've delivered as well. So I think there will be a rise in, those types of hires as we have an increase in, automation, partner tech, etc.
That is absolutely brilliant. It's great to hear about what you're doing, what you're seeing. You have a very exciting vision ahead for 2025. Thanks for being here, Eleanor. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.